Welcome to Homeroom, the podcast, presented by One Church Home, featuring different guests, hosts, and topics focused on building a solid foundation rooted in the Word of God. This podcast was created for those who desire to grow in the will and ways of Jesus. OCH believes in the God-ordained call for believers to commit to their local church. We ask that you would only consume these resources as supplemental and not as a replacement for your local church community. Let's jump into the conversation.
Hey everybody, welcome to our podcast. We are so excited that you are with us. We are going to dive into some really important cultural and, quite honestly, Jesus questions, life-giving questions and conversation over the course of really 5 episodes, 4 on topic, and then at the end, Pastor Steve Berger will join you and do a Q&A.
Yeah.
Everybody, I'm with Renée Rizzo, and she is one of the foremost, one of the experts in our country on the pro-life movement and has her ear to the ground in all things that. And so we're excited that she's with us and taking time to have this conversation because we believe wholeheartedly that this is something that the church needs to be loud about, we need to be talking about, and we need to understand all the different angles that come with this, because it's not just abortion needs to stop, although that needs to happen, but what comes with that. And we have to understand that there are churches that are speaking truth about this. There are churches that don't know what to do with it. They want to be equipped. Maybe this will help them do that. But Jesus is the author of life. He's the Prince of life. He loves life. He's given life. He loves all life that he has created. And so hopefully we'll be able to put in context over the course of 4 or 5 episodes here, really just equipping people to know more about this subject, put in context what this means, and to go glorify Jesus in daily life, having something to speak about or true, honest, responses to this topic. What do you think, Renée?
I'm excited. As you know, I've been in this world for 20 years, but if you're thinking, I don't know anything about it, that's okay. Because you know what, 20 years ago, I didn't know anything, or I thought I knew everything about it. And I had a lot of stereotypes myself about this topic. And so I have learned much, and I just want to equip and educate our community as much as possible, because so much of the time there's so much pain around this topic of abortion and unplanned pregnancy. And unfortunately, when there's pain, people use very destructive ways to talk about it and to act on it. And so we want to be able to unpack that so that when we are talking about it, we are speaking the truth in love, and that we are finding a way to be loving and kind, yet speak the truth. And so I'm just excited to get to do this with you.
Amen, me too. Well, okay, so here's the thing, Renée, is that somebody might be tuning in, whether they're watching on YouTube right now or they're listening on the podcast, and they're saying, why is there a guy in the room for a conversation on abortion and pro-life issue? So explain to us why that's important or why it's not important.
I love it, because I know when we first sat down to talk about this, you all were willing for there not to be men involved, that it would all be female-led. And I was the one to say, no, we need the male voice in this conversation. I think the world has incorrectly decided my body, my choice. In working with women for the last 20 years, unless she is in a horribly abusive relationship, she does not want to make this decision alone and walk through the story alone because she didn't get pregnant alone. And then so in some ways, we've really kind of set up women to do this alone. We've said, okay, it's her body, it's her choice. He has no say in the matter. And yet we're disappointed that father figures aren't in the story, that they're not paying child support, that they're not parents. And I'm like, you can't have it both ways. And so many young men find themselves in this situation and don't know what to say. They don't have a father figure who's guided them. And so they're going to respond the way the media has told them to respond. It's your body, it's your choice, I support you. And on paper, that sounds great. But when she's the girl going through it, it sounds like she's been shafted and left alone. And so that's that guy that needs to hear it. And then the fathers need to hear it. Like, if it's your daughter that gets pregnant, what are you going to do and how are you going to be equipped? So I very much think that men need to be a part of this conversation. They need to be accountable for their choices, and they need to be equipped to help in this conversation. So thank you for being courageous enough and doing this with me.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you and I have had these kind of conversations over the course of the past few years. And just in my role, in past roles I've had with young adults and still continue to do today, I've had to go back and draw from those conversations to men directly who are in this situation. So it's been a very solid resource for me, and just for us to be able to put our guard down just a little bit and go, hey, like, everybody can have this conversation. Yeah. But let's do it with love. Let's do it with respect. And so can you tell us what we're dealing with right now, maybe some current statistics or trends with unplanned pregnancies in the country?
Yes. First, because I always say the first problem that we need to realize is we don't have an abortion problem in this country. We have an unplanned pregnancy problem, which is the number one way to reduce abortions is to reduce unplanned pregnancies. It's really that simple, and yet it seems to be so difficult for us as a country. 50% of all pregnancies in the United States are unplanned. That's higher than any peer country.
So that's marriage otherwise.
That is married otherwise. Married single, 50%. And that is higher than our peer countries. And that number hasn't gone down in the 20 years I've been in this. I thought, for sure, shouldn't we be more educated and more equipped? And what seems to get attached to that immediately when you talk to people about this, well, it's because we don't have enough access to free birth control or low-cost birth control. I wish it were that simple, but from what I've seen in the last 20 years, we hardly have clients who say they got pregnant and they were consistently and correctly using birth control.
Wow.
9 out of 10 times, they knew about it, they had access to it, and they chose not to take it. And that's a whole nother episode on why men and women don't take birth control and don't want to be a part of that conversation. So the answer, just get free birth control in front of everybody, is not going to solve the problem. We have a sex and abortion and unplanned pregnancy literacy problem in this country. So that's the first thing I want to say. Now, walking into an abortion clinic or walking into a pregnancy center, yes, by and large, she is far more likely to be about 18 to 24. 80% of the time, she's going to be making under $30,000 a year, and health insurance may not be available to her. And so she's going to definitely be much more susceptible, and I'll talk about that in the next episode of how we unpack that with her.
Okay. Well, so if we have an unplanned pregnancy issue, then that helps create the issue of abortion. Yeah. What do our abortion statistics look like?
Oh, goodness. The number I try to tell people, and I just talked about this at an event last night, is today, there are about 3,000 abortions a day. It's like 9/11 happening every single day. And so we think about 9/11 and how tragic it is. And so 3,000 in this country every single day. And to break that down a little bit further, about 90% will happen in the first trimester, about 9% in the second trimester, and about 1% in the third trimester. Less than 2%, it's 1.5%, are the result of incest or rape. Wow. And I know that's a really,
that needs to be talked about.
And everyone grabs on that, right? Like, well, what about if the life of the mom is on the line and rape and incest? We don't have an abortion problem of $3,000 a day because of rape and incest and health of the mother. Here's what I can tell you, and people are like, oh, well, it's in the first trimester. Oh, that's so much safer. Go Google and remind yourself what a fetus looks like at 8 weeks and 12 weeks. Go tell the couple that wanted to get pregnant who miscarries, because 1 in 4 pregnancies end in a miscarriage. Go tell that family that their baby didn't matter at 8 to 12 weeks, because when you're having a planned pregnancy and you miscarry, no one says, oh, you just miscarried a clump of cells. People say, I lost my baby.
Right.
And it's only when it's in an unplanned pregnancy do we now redefine whether it's a baby or not. And the other thing that people need to know about the abortion rates is, especially in third trimester, there is a lot going on in our country right now, and we'll get to that in a bit. But third trimester abortions don't need to happen to save the mother's life. I've talked to OBGYN after OBGYN. If the life of the mother is on the line, the fastest way to protect her is to deliver that baby, whether it's vaginally or through a C-section. That is the fastest way. An abortion only adds length and time because she's still going to have to deliver the child.
Sure.
And so I promise you, nobody in the pro-life movement wants to harm a mom or make it hard for women who have been raped or have incest. That is not why we're all concerned about it. We are concerned about the 2,997 that are happening simply because women don't have and are using birth control consistently, and and her and her partner are making risky choices.
I think that, there is a narrative out there that pro-life folks lack compassion and empathy, etc. And let's be honest, there probably are.
Right.
There probably are. This is the way it should be, and let's walk down that road. And the truth of the matter is, it's people maybe like yourself, us, doing this that might help give some folks some more answers, and how to respond to people, and really do some work on the inside to say, I can be empathetic. There is a way to be compassionate about this topic. Not everything fits, into one little box here. So I'm glad that you brought that up. Now, there's a lot of talk going on. We're just looking over, I don't know, the ridge at Roe v. Wade and what the Supreme Court is going to be making a decision, a ruling on Roe v. Wade here very, very shortly. So can you update us on current abortion laws and maybe what the Roe v. Wade situation might be?
Absolutely. The first thing I like to remind folks, and again, I didn't know about this myself, and I thought I knew everything, is abortion happened before Roe v. Wade came on the scene. And so it was a state-by-state decision about whether or not abortion would be legal. And so that's the first thing that we need to remember. If Roe v. Wade goes down, and the fact that this case is even being heard in such a landmark way, I think for the last 50 years, the reason why this has been attacked is it a life, is it not a life? And I think with the Dobbs case, it's really less about that and more about, is it really a constitutional right? And should this be a constitutional decision? And so that's really, it's at play here. So if Roe v. Wade goes away, the decision then goes back down to the state level. And so the best place to find out where your state is on this is, and I love them for their accuracy. Of course, I don't love the slant that they take, but there's two ways that we get that abortion statistic. Guttmacher Institute, you can go to their website, and they actually have an update on where all of the states are currently and where they will be in a post-Roe v. Wade world. And the CDC also reports numbers. So whenever you see abortion rates, the CDC and WHO are reporting numbers based on what's reported. The problem with that is not every state is forced to report. So Guttmacher every 3 years does surveys. And so that is viewed as the more accurate number. So even when you're looking at those stats, we're about 3 years behind from that. And now that the abortion pill is on the scene, which is going to be highly unregulated, my suspicion is we will be underreporting in the coming years. And so that's the fastest way. What I can tell you is there's about 12 states that have already enacted a trigger law. And people are like, well, what's a trigger law? Basically, the trigger law is if Roe v. Wade goes down, this state is going to adapt back to what the law was before Roe v. Wade went into existence. So like the state that you and I are in, abortion would then be illegal. They're about, on the other side of the fence, there's probably about 20 states that are already putting laws in place to make it even easier, not only to have a first and second trimester abortion, but a third trimester abortion, or even what we'd call post-delivery abortion, where that child is left to die. And so you are seeing about a third of the states go one way to be more strict, a third of the states to be much more lenient, and then about a third of the states in the middle going, I don't know what to do. I can tell you what people haven't realized, the kind of the smoke and gun that kind of went in under the radar in December while Dobbs was being presented, was the FDA allowed for the abortion pill to be sold over the internet. And so that's telehealth care. And the abortion pill, unlike birth control, which just prevents ovulation and conception, the morning after pill, which also kind of prevents conception. The abortion pills, it's actually 2, really just forces a miscarriage over a 48-hour period. It was said to be safe up to 10 weeks, and now it's being promoted up to 12 weeks. But if you're not doing a doctor's visit and you're not doing an ultrasound, then you really don't know how far along she is. And so I'm worried about that pill getting in the hands of everybody who is too far along to be using it. So even if it's illegal in our state, how do we stop a young girl from asking her best friend in New York to go order the pill and then she overnights it to her? If you're not having to do a doctor's visit, how are you verifying that pregnancy? So no matter what happens with Roe v. Wade, ignore the media that says abortion's going to be illegal everywhere and hard to get. Pay attention to what's happening in your state. Look it up. And then even in your own state, not every abortion clinic has the same level to do abortions. And it's all dependent on the medical director. Like in Nashville, Tennessee, when I first arrived, they only had jurisdiction to do abortion up to 13 weeks. Now they currently do them up to 19 weeks, 6 days. Okay. And so
19 weeks, 6 days.
Yeah, so about a 20-week pregnancy.
Yeah.
So get that around your head. So when people say that's not happening, it's happening every day. We as believers want to just not stare at it because it's so horrific and graphic.
Yeah, so I mean, you touched on a lot of the things that are out there, that are legal out there to end a pregnancy right there. But when we talk about birth control and we talk about the morning after pill or the abortion pills, we talk about different ways of abortion. I mean, can you break that down, what the difference of all of this is for us?
And I know this is a hard topic because some people listening to this are like, I don't want to talk about birth control. And I get it. But I feel like you and I are big believers in presenting people with the information and then unpacking what you think is appropriate for you.
Right.
I would love all young people to not have sex until they get married and or when they're married to have sex only in a decided decision. But you and I both know abstinence is really hard without the Holy Spirit working in you. And so if we have some very people in a risky life situation, I would rather them be using birth control than nothing at all.
Yep.
But I've been a proponent of whether it's oral, IUD, birth control that stops ovulation is really the one that's going to be the most likely not to do what people would call a chemical abortion. And it's why so many different denominations are against birth control, because there are some low-grade birth control that still allow for ovulation. And so it's really just ending that pregnancy days later as opposed to weeks later. So how does that make it any more real?
Can we just stop on that for a second? Because I don't know that people know that or are aware of that. So can you go into that a little bit more? What does that look like?
That's a good question. So if you are talking to your OBGYN, you definitely want to ask about that if you are looking at birth control. And birth control can either be an oral medication you take every single day. It can be a shot that I believe is 4 times a year, or it can be an IUD that would be inserted in you 3 to 5 years. Most shots and IUDs are going to stop ovulation, which means there's no egg to fertilize.
Right.
And so it's just a barrier. The pill can, a low dosage, and a lot of time abortion clinics will provide a low dosage of the pill because it's actually going to increase her chances of ovulating, which would cause conception and fertilization. And so staying on the pill kind of forces, in a way, an early miscarriage that she's not even going to know about. So that is kind of the difference. The morning after pill, that is something that is now available over the counter. So that's why the rape and incest rate is so low. Because if you have had unprotected sex, whether you chose to do it or it was forced on you, you can actually now go to the local drugstore and go get it, and it's under $50. Wow. And it's basically a high dosage of birth control, and it's really just going to stop that conception and fertilization from happening. If you are raped and you go to a hospital for a date rape kit, they're going to administer that morning after pill to you, and that is most effective taken in the first 24 hours. Really different than the abortion pill, which is 2 pills that it is already a confirmed pregnancy, confirmed heartbeat. she's far enough along. There is, in fact, brainwaves, heartbeat, and it is forcing the body to miscarry.
Yeah, my guess is many of our listeners and viewers don't really know everything you just said.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad we were able to touch on that. And I think it's continually important to talk about the healthcare issue, both men and women on this. Can you dive into, more than anything, I think that one of the great arguments out there for clinics is this healthcare issue.
Yes.
So I need you to talk about that.
That's
you can tell it just got all over you.
Oh, because it's the biggest lie that's out there. But thank you for asking that. We want women to have access to health care for sure. We want men to have access to health care. There are, maybe less than 1,000 abortion clinics in this country.
Okay.
There are over 14,000 federally qualified healthcare organizations or similar.
Okay, slowly. Repeat everything you just said about the 1,000 and the 14,000.
Yeah. So there's about 1,000 abortion clinics in this country.
1,000 abortion clinics.
There are 14,000 medical clinics.
Medical clinics.
And I can tell you, just even by looking at the data in our own state, medical clinics usually outnumber an abortion clinic 30-1 in every state. And we are in all of the same areas that an abortion clinic would be in.
What does a medical clinic do?
And that's the thing. Most medical clinic will do all forms of women's health care. Okay. They will do all forms of general health care. And it's interesting because a lot of times the abortion industry will give a lot of miscredit to pregnancy centers because they'll call them not medical clinics because we don't do abortions. Well, most clinics don't do abortions. Doctors' offices don't always do abortions. And so there's a very small number of places that in fact will do, nobody's going to go no one's going to go to the local hospital and say, well, you're not a medical clinic because you don't do abortions.
Yeah.
And so I want people to know that. And I also want people to know about affordability. I did a market research in my area when I ran a pregnancy center. All of the medical clinics, including ours, our rates were sometimes half, if not a third, of the cost that the local abortion clinic was charging. We were doing pregnancy tests and ultrasounds for free. They were charging a lot of money. We were charging $75 for a woman's well care visit. They were charging $150. So not only are there more of us, but most of the time we're actually charging similar rates or cheaper rates for healthcare.
I mean, so those are the myths that kind of are around it all.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Y'all, we have such an incredible few episodes coming. You can see we're just kicking it off, talking about some of the things around this issue of pro-life, the myths, the truths, the statistics. And we hope that you join us. Get this stuff downloaded in you. Equip yourself. We're helping you be equipped to have this conversation and to know what's really, really going on. This isn't for us to stay quiet about. It's for us to know about, to do something with, to pray into, to see what God would have each person do with it. Renée, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this. And hey, we'll see you in the next episode, right?
Yes.
Amen.
Amen.
All right. God bless you all.